Welcome to The Blueprint, where we seek out individuals that are built to be the best, giving us tips and tools to excel, taking us to the next level of growth.
I got it. Perfect. So, super excited about today. Going to talk a little bit about, being overwhelmed. Specifically, I think this happens a lot when either you're new to a new role, additionally promoted, or as a period of time you take on more work. The more work you take on, you normally can manage it, but then it becomes harder to manage the ebb and flows, right? It seems like in leadership roles, you get really busy and then, it's really relaxed and really busy, but sometimes those busy points become a little bit challenging to work through. I have some conventional kind of ideas that we can read through that, help, I think. But then the question becomes, what happens when they don't work? And what I mean by that is like the first one. I think the standard thing someone would tell you is prioritize your task, write them down in terms like a task list, right? And I think that's great. There's the Eisenhower matrix where you could look at what's urgent and important, what's important but not urgent, what's urgent but not important, what's neither urgent nor important. And then you can kind of consider what to do in those sorts of things. And I think that, again, could probably be a whole lesson in itself. But what I'm really after, right, is what happens when you're so overwhelmed that you just don't even have time, or at least you don't feel like you have time. I should probably say that differently. You don't feel like you even have time to do that, right? Like everything's just so frantic. Your hair's on fire. You're just going in and just trying to get stuff done. And, somebody comes along and says, well, make a task list, write everything down, write me a proposal to add more staff to your team. I think that's probably one I've heard. So what are some things that come to your guys' mind that, or situations, instances that you can relate to when that's kind of happened to you?
I can kind of say it's happening to me right now. With the implementation of 2 programs while simultaneously doing the things for the other 2. I think my favorite saying, and it's something that my pastor says nearly every Sunday, is you don't know what you don't know, and you can only do what you can do. And so I try my best to follow that. And kind of what you said, Devin, with the urgent versus important matrix, I follow that very loosely, in the sense that, I prioritize my tasks, and then at the end of the day, if I don't get something done, I don't get it done that day. And, it's something that I work on the next day or the next time that I have the available time.
Yeah,
and so does that work? Sorry.
That's okay. I was going to just say, I think in addition to prioritizing, because if there really is more work than can possibly be done, you have to look at strategizing on how to delegate or to bring additional resources in maybe. And for me, that's easier said than done because I'm not a great delegator. I tend to like to know that something's done exactly the way that I would do it. And when you delegate, you don't always have that confidence level, I guess. So, but I think that would be in addition to some of the prioritizing, and, having a task list or a to-do list. It is looking at what do you need to do versus what can others do.
And I think, again, these are things that I think are commonly said. These are things that are commonly said, particularly when it comes to like leadership coaches, right? The making the task list, prioritizing, delegating. And those are all great, but sometimes, for example, delegation takes time, right? Like you can't just give somebody a task And you also have to have someone to delegate to. What if you don't have anyone to delegate to? Particularly, let's say you're a brand new leader and you're managing frontline resources. Who are you going to delegate
to? To me, it's different. I sometimes find myself too overwhelmed with not just work, but all the personal stuff I have to take care of. And sometimes when that happens, I just move away from my desk and take a break. Sometimes walk for maybe a few minutes, just to refresh my mind and really try to think things through, and that helps. I mean, when I finally set my mind to it and say to myself that okay, I'm ready to face all of it, then that's when I start accomplishing more than what I used to. So and I mean, that works for me. I don't know if that works for other people, but to me it's like sometimes you just have to take a deep breath, rest, and refresh, to think clearly again.
Yeah, and I think that's really a good point, and I want to put a pin on that one because I want to come back to it, right? Because I think there's some strategies to do it that are good and not so good. There's some that are effective, there's some that are not effective, right? But again, just kind of I guess just to wrap up the point I was making, and I'll kind of reiterate some other good practices. I'm not saying that these other good practices don't work. What I'm saying is they don't always work at all times, but we've been prescribed them, particularly as leaders, as new leaders. We get prescribed them a lot as a general response to, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Okay, well, make a task list and prioritize. Okay, if you have too much stuff to do still, what do? Okay, the next answer is that the canned response is to delegate. Well, if you have no one to delegate to, or have no time to delegate to somebody because I have to train them, I'd have to follow up with them, that's not going to work immediately either. Those are great solutions for long term. They probably should have been solutions that we should have already been doing, right? Because if we were making those task lists appropriately, maybe we would have seen this coming ahead of time, maybe, depending on what the ebb and flow of your workload is, of course. If we saw things building up ahead of time, we could have started training people and delegating. And obviously, it's a good management practice to have somebody always there to kind of be your backfill. Those are all great things, but if those weren't happening, or they weren't able to happen, or you're new to this role, whether it be a promotion or change of responsibility, whatever, or all of a sudden, those things aren't really doable as much, right? There's obviously the item of managing distractions. If you could manage your distractions, we talked about the Pomodoro effect and that technique. That's fantastic. But I'm too busy to even have distractions anyways, so that's not going to work, right? There's also, I think, the fact that some people, maybe they hold themselves to a perfectionist status on everything, so it takes them too long to do things. That's also something you can look at. And I think that's something you should kind of reflect on as you feel yourself get overwhelmed. Like, am I trying to put too much time in every single task where good enough would just be good enough, right? Like that task, because it wasn't as important, right? It was urgent but not important, that I could have just knocked it out and got it done, and I didn't have to do it to 130% of the need, right? Just 100% of the need, the ask would have been quite sufficient. And those are things we've talked about too. But I think there's some other pieces, right, that are important. Taking care of yourself, right? Which is, I think, and you've talked about before, getting enough sleep, making sure that you're as effective as possible when you're doing the work. And then kind of reflecting and adjusting on the day, I think, is another great practice. It takes a little bit of time. You can reflect, you can adjust. But what I'm interested to know from you guys and your perspective is, what is your trigger that tells you you're overwhelmed? Because for me, I think I've identified over the years my like trigger or identifier that go, okay, I'm clearly overwhelmed right now because of X, Y, and Z. This is what I'm doing. But I think until I identified that, I really felt like it was quicksand. Like I didn't even realize I was overworked to initiate any of these things. I'm just going and just, grinding out the day. What are your guys' triggers?
I cry.
So if I
Oh,
find
yeah,
you're
me
crying,
too.
then I know you're overworked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, me too. It's the same with Brit. I cry too.
I think when I was younger, I would cry. I mean, I think it was just so overwhelming. I don't tend to do that now. I do probably, I get frustrated. I probably am much more short-tempered or curt in communications. That's one way. Probably that, I recognize in myself, but others can too, that I'm feeling maybe not up to par.
Okay.
For myself, it's probably when I have 3 meetings happening at the same time and I can't choose which one to go on or attend. Typically, when there's conflict and you're not overwhelmed, it's easy to decipher which one you need to be on and which ones you can't be on. The other is when everything is important at the same time happening and you finish your day without completing your task list. And you get a lot more, I'd say, irritated with the small things because they tend to add up to things you have to worry about when in reality you shouldn't. So there's that blaming aspect of it where it's everybody's fault that you're swamped and not necessarily yours kind of mindset. So that happens sometimes.
Okay. So for me, it's maybe some of the same there about taskless and that, but it's kind of opposite direction. So, and it's funny because I feel like I've experienced this with some other supervisors as they become my supervisors, and we joke about it and I point it out, but for me, it's when you have something that works really well for you, right, on a normal basis, right, like creating your task list, identifying your most critical tasks, writing a nice agenda for the day. I know when I'm getting overwhelmed is when I don't do those things, and for whatever reason, it doesn't even make sense, to be honest, right? I stop doing those things because I feel like I don't have time and I just jump right in and just start going, and then that becomes the reason that you kind of almost give yourself is like, oh, I just don't have time for those. I don't have time to do that. I just need to get this done, right? Like, I don't have time to write it down. I'm just going to go do it. I don't have time to organize. I just got to do it. But it kind of creates like a quicksand effect, right? Like where you just keep sinking further and further and further because I find then I'm not getting the right things done. So I'm spending time on things, right? But because I didn't stop and make sure that I really focused on the correct things at the right time, and you're kind of almost going in with a mindset of like, well, everything's important and urgent, so I must do it all. Then that's when I'm like, okay, look, if I haven't written my task list for the last 2 days, I know I'm starting to get overworked, right? And it's like you have to stop and kind of pause and redirect and put yourself back on track for what you know works, right? So like, I know this works, I have to do it. The problem is it's not working. And for me, there's a difference between it works, but it's not working. It works in the sense that it helps you get the most important things done. It's not working because you're so overworked that you have too many top priorities and things are falling off. So you kind of just throw that by the wayside and just try to get as much done as you can. But that has that downward effect because now I'm also not getting all the things done, but I'm also not getting any of the most important things done because I didn't stop and think about it, right? So it kind of it has that downward effect, right? So what are some things that you guys do? And I know, Anne, you mentioned, for you, it's taking a break and pause and kind of resting. But like Marlon, you have 3 calls at once. That's your identifier. What's your next step?
First off, I try to analyze what task or actions that needs to be completed are only a result of something else that could have prevented it. Because typically there are additional tasks that varies you in things that you have to do if there are things that are not getting done. So basically, you create problems or additional tasks, or the team in general creates additional problems when some things are not done. So instead of just trying to do everything at the same time, I try to step back and try to see, okay, which tasks are caused by another. Let me just fix that. And so even if I have to do this task today, I won't be doing it again next week, because those are typically a result of something not getting done, or basically not doing it correctly the first time.
Okay. Brittany, what about you? What's your kind of resolve? You're in it. You find yourself crying in the corner. You're ready. You're ready to go WWE on somebody. What do you do?
So I have two things that really help me a lot. The first is hugging my kid. He'll, I'll just say, "Come give mom a hug," and he doesn't ask questions, he just does. The other thing is, and it doesn't work so well just yet up here in Connecticut, but the beach, the sun, the water, the sound, it refreshes my soul. And so that's usually how I reset myself.
Okay. Any other suggestions?
Yeah, I tend to agree that getting away from it, like stepping back and trying to separate yourself from focusing on all of the work and everything. It's, doing something at a personal level so that you have a chance to just take a mental break, I think, before you come back a little bit more refreshed and ready to maybe tackle things again.
And I said except for Anne because the reason is it seems like we're kind of all getting in the same kind of direction that Anne, I think, kicked us off on about, kind of pausing and resting, right? I think everyone's using different descriptive words for that because resting could mean something different for somebody versus somebody else, right? We talked a lot about work, right? But oftentimes, I think, too, looking back and talking to some people that I've worked with pretty closely, when they get that promotion or they first take their step into leadership, their kind of personal life tends to suffer a little bit too, right? Because they do feel overwhelmed. They feel now obligated. They feel responsible for a job, so much so that they're no longer working to live. They're now living to work. Like every day is just, I have to go, I have to get this done, I have to get this done, I have to get this done. And then, I think that also causes burnout. It causes people to find other pastures of greener grass that they think might be there because they're like, I can't survive like this. I'm not happy. My family's always bugging me because I'm not available. I'm stressed out all the time. I'm irritable, all those things, right? But also at the same time, I think sometimes you can get really stretched too in your personal life, right? I mean, at the term, I think it's called adulting, right? Like there's things you have to do all the time. There's chores around the house. There's family needs. There's meetings of your own, right? How do you get all those to work with on top of you? It's not like you can just delegate an important family event to somebody else. What do you guys do?
So for me, my son is in baseball, and I didn't realize what I was signing up for when I signed up for it. And so, when it's time to go, it's time to go, and I stop, and I don't know how I'm able to do it. I'll just stop whatever I'm doing when it's time to go, and we go and we do our baseball and we get our dinner afterwards, and if there's anything that needs to be taken care of immediately when I get home, that's when I handle it. But when I'm out, I'm fully engaged in the activity that I'm in, I guess. Like I'm fully engaged in baseball. And then also like I go to school, so I shut the work stuff off and I get straight into my school stuff, and sometimes it's a very harsh stop where I'm like, all right, sorry, got a blast, and like within 22 seconds my computer's shut. But I make sure that I make the time for my son when he needs it, and then school is something that I do just because I'm bored. And so I make sure I make time for that. And I just shut it off.
Love it. I mean, there's a basic principle that I try to apply along those lines, right? Just being present. But the principle I apply is there's no partial credit for family, right? Like you could turn in work or like an assignment when you're going to school and you can get some partial credit for it, like, okay. But if you go somewhere with your kids, your family, and you're not actually there present with them, there's no partial credit for that. They it's still this animosity that you're not actually there. Like, oh, you're on the phone again, you're doing this again, right? So, but it's at the same time, right? Like if you're working and your family keeps calling you, there has to be that divide. There has to be a balance between work and life, and when it's time to work, it's time to work, and that's how we hurry and get things done. And when it's time for family, we hurried and got things done so we can be with our family. That's just kind of a basic principle that I use. Is there's no partial credit when it comes to family, because for me it's easier for me to be 100% focused and present at work. It's the family, it's the after work, it's the outside stuff that sometimes it's hard. So that's kind of where I apply that principle.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, Devin, I agree with you. Once talked about this, and I shared a quote that said, in the future, nobody will remember how hardworking you were, except for your kids. So it's just really the important thing is that you don't think that they see you every day, but they do, and so that's kind of all they know. If you don't do a good job separating the two.
I'll be honest, when I get overwhelmed at work, guess where it feels the hurt first, right? And it is family. As much as I can sit here and try to tell you I have this quote or I have that quote or I try to do this or try to do that, at the end of the day, we're human, right? And when we feel the pressure immediately comes from work. Family tries to be more forgiving up front, right? Generally speaking. Maybe not, depending on your situation, but that's where the burden usually will come from. They're going to feel it first because you focus on the work, or we tend to. And I'm bringing all of these together kind of for this roll up of a social experiment that I want to try with you guys. I want to see what it does. I want to see what you do. I want to see if it helps. Okay. And this is why I said I'm putting a pin on what Ann said. I want to give you all a day off that's not an actual day off, meaning you're going to have the day, you're going to block it off on the calendar, and you do with what you want with it. It's not a PTO day, so don't submit PTO, but you're going to take that day to regroup and reflect in whatever you need to do. And then we're going to come back and I want to hear how you structured it, how you planned it, what you did, and the results. That's the only thing I ask. Because you block it on the calendar, you follow the same process except for requesting it off because maybe you're working, maybe you're not. I don't know. That depends on what you need. And then we'll talk about it. Anyone not want to try?
Not that I don't want to try, but what?
Yeah, I'm gonna think about even what to do with that and when we start. So
you all have until next week to have your day blocked off. Follow the same principles, so don't block it off when somebody else already has the time. Put it on the calendar. Follow your out of office principles, but just it's not an actual PTO day, so you're not submitting a benefit time or anything like that for it.
Okay.
I just want to see what we do, because what might come of it is some solutions. What might come in is some clarity. I don't know. It's just going to be interesting to see what happens. We're taking
So,
the rest, recoup, and all those thought processes to its maximum, and then we'll talk about what happens.
so we can just color code it on the calendar.
All you got to do.
Okay. And what's the time range to complete it?
The next.
Next week you
say-
said pick your date.
Yep. So I was gonna say next month. I think is the next follow-up call.
Okay.
So basically, the next habits call, as long as it's a month out. So we're looking in July. July's habits call. But I'm interested to hear back what happens. You can ask whatever questions you want between now and then. I just ask that you share those with the group when we report back.
Rita, I don't know how well our hope to work our PTO better this year is going to be.
I know.
Yeah, by the end of next week, if you don't have one, I'm just going to pick a day for you. All right. So I think this is going to be a fun experiment because I'm not giving a lot of details other than the fact that I want you to plan and share. Because I want to see what different solutions come out of it and what the results are. So that's the whole reason for the vagueness. I will participate as well, and I look forward to sharing back.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. We'll talk to you guys all
Sounds exciting.
next time. Yeah.
Thanks. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank
All
you.
right. Bye.
For content suggestions, please reach out to the blueprint at teleperformance.com.